tends to be younger, less experienced shooters, but it could be an old guy. Well, I can shoot this thing. I shoot this lights out. Well, if you can, good for you. But if you're just saying that based on absolutely nothing, you're full of crap and you're going to get yourself hurt. Terminally, probably. Hi there, and welcome to the Guns Podcast US, sponsored by Guns Magazine and brought to you by Ruger. I'm your host, Brent Wheat, and we'd like to thank you for joining us here on one of the world's biggest audio and video gun talk programs as we chat with the interesting folks about the interesting stuff that makes up the world of shooting. Before we get started, of course, here's a quick word from our great sponsor, Ruger.
Looking for a firearm that's rugged, reliable, and built in America? Ruger Firearms has been trusted by shooters for generations, offering everything from hunting rifles to everyday carry handguns. Whether you're on the range, in the field, or protecting your home, Ruger delivers durability and performance you can count on. Discover the full lineup, explore new releases, and see why Ruger continues to set the standard. Visit Ruger.com today.
Well, joining me today is, we were talking about this before I hit record, it's my unofficial co-host, and there's apparently a groundswell of effort from commenters and emails saying, Roy, don't become the official co-host, just be the unofficial co-host because you can keep Brent on his toes. So what's up with that?
I have no idea, but they always say, they say, keep your independence.
Yeah.
I don't know, but whatever. We'll be happy doing it.
Yeah, it's funny, and it's kind of become an inside joke at this point because you're never going to agree to be the permanent unofficial host, even though you've never turned me down anytime we wanted to talk. So anyway, that's pretty funny that got brought up. But I got to say, today is kind of a seat of the pants kind of topic, and I think it's one that will generate a lot of interest. But I got to say, this is one thing that I'm less experienced in. I've shot them, I've held them, but frankly, I don't really know much about the 327 Magnum, and quite frankly, I don't know that I see a use for it. So, Roy, are you going to educate me on this?
I'll tell you, this is a topic exactly like AR-15s. is the 327 fanboys will hunt you down if you ever say anything bad about them.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that.
I know, but the people who are a little more objective and a little bit more reasonable tend to understand the differences.
Yeah.
And the same people who buy a Smith & Wesson airweight revolver and load it with 158 grain 357 Magnums, thinking that that's the bare minimum they should carry, are the people who want to do the same thing with the 327 Federal. And I'm not sure they've ever actually shot one of these guns.
It gets your attention right now.
Yeah, because the people who are more reasonable about it, well, we've talked about this before. I think we did a show on the 32 H&R Magnum,
right,
and we strayed into 327 a little bit. But in the comments, invariably, it was the people who, the fanboys, 327 all the time, no matter what, the Underwood loads but then there were other people that said, well, you know what, I bought one of those lightweight Smith & Wesson revolvers in 327. I loaded it, fired it, and said, well, I'm not going to do that again.
That's for sale.
Yeah. Muzzle flash and and a sonic boom and all that kind of stuff, and they say, but I'm perfectly happy carrying 32 H&R Magnum in it now. So we will acknowledge the fact that I think but some of the listeners have just now left the house
after they left a nasty comment or a angry email.
And go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say our usual disclaimer that truly we don't hate any round or any gun here, with certain exceptions. We're just trying to broaden folks' horizon, and it is funny, like you said, there are the fanboys for every caliber, and to them, it's the ultimate round for everything. Whether you're talking grizzly bear, chipmunk, self-defense, defense against aliens, or drones, that is the one true holy grail. It is the precious, and it works. Okay. It does, but we're just trying to open minds here. And we're going to say, I think that's what we do, Roy, is we say the emperor doesn't have any clothes on, and that's hard for some folks to accept.
Well, too many shooters believe in anecdotal information and repeated rumors and God forbid what they read in the popular firearms press and on websites.
Never do that.
I know. Yeah. The internet's I'm 10 times worse than at least printed articles have some editor who's reading it first to make sure that's not completely ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I really equate this whole 327-32 Magnum to the 357-38 Special. I personally don't think you ever need to carry a 357 Magnum as a defensive load in a revolver. I have shot hundreds of gel blocks of every kind of caliber you can think of, including 38 Special and 357 Magnum. And while the 357 may penetrate a little more sometimes a little less because that velocity causes bullets to break up, right? A 38 Special does as well or even better sometimes, but with less muzzle blast, less recoil, less expense. And I've always said, if you think you need that, then you should go up a caliber, go up to a 10 or go up to a 44 or something like that, because then you can tone things down and still have that power that you want, right?
Well, I think some of it is related to the I've heard it called the callowness of youth. And I'm talking to you, that 35, 30-ish and under guy that, okay, you're going to carry a revolver. Good for you. You've got an open mind, but they tend to say, oh, recoil doesn't bother me at all. And I will say I'm a fairly recoil insensitive person. But you fire a 327, a 357, and especially an airweight 44, certainly the 454 Cazul. And I'm a big guy. I'm fairly recoil insensitive. I'm fairly stout, I guess you would say. And I got to say, it hurts. And that may not be a big deal for round number 1, but rounds 2, 3, 4, and 5, it can be an issue. And that's what I just try to tell folks is get past your machismo and really look at, could I do better with maybe a less recoiling round to where I can now put 6 rounds in, 2 inches at 15 yards really fast? Or is it more pow, big muzzle blast, and then it takes you a second to get back online and you're going to flinch because a normal human doesn't like pain. You shouldn't go, oh, I love that. If you do, you got bigger problems in what caliber to select.
I think this is the same people who imagine that a home defense situation will be the bad guy is standing at the end of your hallway. He's backlit. He's holding a knife. Yeah, square to you. He's holding a knife up like this, and he's not moving, right? Yeah. And you have your whatever fill in the blank favorite gun, and you shoot him, and he falls down dead. And then the next scene are the police are standing there looking over his body, congratulating you. Okay.
And I shouldn't laugh, and now Mas Ayub comes in. Well, there are issues to discuss.
It's true. Yeah. Should you speak to the police or not? But I think if you could force yourself to step back and honestly be objective, but it takes some experience. So you have to read up on it. You have to do your own testing. You have to talk to people who are informed. But if you really look at it, like what you say is true, in a situation where you're in a defensive shooting, you want every advantage possible. So a heavy recoil and a lot of muzzle blast and loud noise is already checking the boxes against you. Right? So when you need your vision most, when you need your hearing most, when you need hand-eye coordination the most, you've just introduced things that are going to mess up all 3 of those categories. Yeah. And for no reason. Really. And it's, I think a lot of, because I know this happens, you do too, that people will buy a 327 Magnum, for instance, a small frame revolver. They'll buy whatever the hottest, biggest, Underwood, something, Buffalo Bore, or whatever. They'll load it up and they'll close the cylinder and they'll put it next to their bed and they'll feel very happy.
They're a gunfighter now.
Yeah, but they don't ever shoot it. They won't. If they do shoot it once, they'll probably go into denial and saying, well, that was
didn't
just
hurt.
a fluke.
Yeah.
No, it's not. I mean, think about something. A 327 Federal, I think, is about 20 or 21,000 PS, 32 H&R Magnum, sorry, is about 21,000 PSI. And a 327 Federal is more like 32 to 35,000. It's 357 Magnum pressure range.
Yeah.
And but you have to think of that. I think where a 327 shines is in a rifle.
Mm-hmm.
I built a single shot rifle for a good friend of mine not too long ago, and he wanted a 327 Federal. So I said, well, you really don't need that. If I have one in 32 Magnum, and it just works great. It kills these small games. You could probably take deer with it if you wanted to with the right load. I tried to convince him, you get a 124 grain hard cast lead semi-wad cutter at 12 or 1300 feet per second. That's all you need. He was insistent that he wanted a 327. So that's what we did. We chambered it for that. And, I fired the first 327 out of it, and it kicked like a 30-30. I was so surprised.
Hello?
I mean, it was a pretty stout load, but it was a single shot, break open rifle.
Yeah.
And it was like, pow! And I went, well, that was a surprise, but it made me remember that, I mean, it's a pretty significant cartridge. And, and I think I had I don't know what it was, 1,600 feet per second, with a 120 or something like that. I mean, this was a killing machine if you needed it.
Yeah.
He was going to shoot hogs in Texas with it, and he went on to actually do that. But then I loaded it with 32 Magnum, and I have a bunch of Black Hills. It's like an 87 grain bullet, and it trundles out at about 1,300 feet per second, out of a rifle length, short rifle barrel, and I don't know what you can't do with that.
Yep.
It's pleasant to shoot because it's not a heavy bullet. There's not a lot of muzzle blast. The cartridges eject easily, because they're not pressure sealed to the chamber walls. And they reload easily and all that kind of stuff. So, but like you say all the time, okay, we're not saying that the 327 is bad or anything, but you shouldn't use a screwdriver as a wrench.
Exactly.
And I think a 327 Magnum has a role, and the role is as a small game cartridge from long guns or handguns of a more substantial nature, So if you have some sort of Ruger single action or, whatever other bigger double action revolver, and it's in 327, well, that's probably a pretty okay gun.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like shooting a L frame 357.
Yeah.
You can shoot, if you really need to shoot 357 for whatever reason, maybe you're hunting small deer or you're pig hunting or whatever you're doing with it. Well, then that's appropriate. There's nothing wrong with that. And you can always shoot 38 specials. But boy, to shoot that same load in some small defensive gun, that's the thing I'm trying to get people to understand, is that you just don't need it. And if you do buy it, trust me, if it's 3 o'clock in the morning, your wife just nudged your shoulder, you wake up, it's dark. You can't see, you can't hear. You grab your little 327 short-barreled revolver off the table, and, God forbid if you end up shooting the thing in the house, you're going to be deaf and blind. It's just ridiculous. So don't do it, people.
Well, I wanted to hit that point. You and I talk about that a lot, and I hear a lot of comments that poo-poo that. Well, it's not that bad, and I'm sure I'll still be able to see and hear. Try it. No, you won't. It makes a big difference. Yeah.
Yeah. I have shot a 357 Magnum in an enclosed. We were at Thunder Ranch, dark, pitch dark, right? I did wear hearing protection and eye protection, but the first shot, it was a short-barreled revolver. I was absolutely blind. Mm-hmm. All I saw was a big, if you stare at a bright light and then look away, you can see the
big ball,
the big ball, right?
Yeah.
That's all I saw in front of me.
Yeah.
And I had a flashlight, And so I turned the flashlight on to look at the target, and I could kind of barely make the target out because I had that big ball in front of me still.
Yeah.
And then we duplicated that test with standard velocity 38 defensive loads.
Yeah.
Well, and it was night and day, literally, right?
Yeah.
Suddenly I could see. I had a little bit of residual, a little bit of artifacts, that were still there, but the muzzle blast was hugely less, all that kind of stuff. It's why I don't like ports in a defensive gun, because interestingly enough, because I did experiments, is you don't always see them. It's really interesting, and I actually was, when I was smart, I knew the dynamics behind that, and it has something to do with sometimes in filming an airplane propeller, the airplane propeller looks like it's going really slow, or almost looks like it's stopped.
Yeah, it has to do with the frame rate and the
exactly.
RPM.
Yeah, and evidently the muzzle flash also has to do with, did you blink right when the gun went off, for instance? Well, then it disappears so fast that you don't see the flash. But I'm here to tell you that if your eyes are open and you get that fire and brimstone from your 327 Federal ported 2-inch revolver, you've just lost your ability to fight right now. It's just ridiculous.
Well, and the muzzle blast, unless you got ear pro on, which, we've talked about, that's not a bad thing. But if you don't have ear pro on, you're not going to hear if maybe the guy's, okay, you got him, but maybe his buddy's coming down the hall, or, you don't know. And that's that moment where you really need all of your senses. And you've just done permanent hearing loss. Yeah.
You've just done permanent damage to your hearing.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, boys. There's no way around that.
What, Roy? What?
Yeah. People say, "Oh, well, I used to shoot guns all the time with no hearing protection," and then you say something to them, and they go, "What? What?"
We're both those guys. We've talked about it before.
Yeah.
I was made fun of because I used hearing protection back in the old days with the revolver. I stuck 38 casings in my ear, which is bad for many different reasons.
When I was 16, I remember we shot 357 Magnums underneath a covered shooting thing outside with no hearing protection. I wear hearing aids because I was an idiot. That's why I advocate having a set of electronic earmuffs next to your bed at nighttime. And I Walker makes some that have 2 knobs, one on either side, and just, so there's no buttons you have to try to push. And so you just pick it up, put it on, reach over and turn on 2 knobs. Well, now you have Superman hearing.
Yes.
And then now if you have a gun that doesn't do this huge muzzle atomic bomb blast in front of your face, well, now you actually can be more effective,
Okay, sidebar, if we had welding goggles, some of those automatic ones.
Right.
So we need to have tactical home defense goggles you put on your welding mask and your hearing protection, and then if you shoot, that darkens automatically so you can still see. And then
that's actually really interesting. It is. It's actually really interesting.
I would bet they would be able to do it because
I weld, and I have a couple of really good quality of those auto darkening, and you can adjust their sensitivity. So you can have them be ultra sensitive to where just when the arc barely starts, pow, it darkens, right?
Yeah. Or
you can have it be less sensitive so you can see, little sparks and stuff. I will try that. In other words, I have a ported little short barreled 357 Magnum that somebody gave me one time.
Yeah.
And I will shoot that in the dark. And when you come visit, we should do it on my back patio.
Yes.
And let's see if it actually makes a difference. That's a really interesting idea, because you may have just created a whole new market, home defense goggles or something,
Oh,
that's a really interesting point. Yeah.
Well, leave it to me to come up with strange and bizarre ideas, usually looking for a laugh, but no, we'll have to try that. But getting back to the 327, it's okay for its intended purpose. I don't really see the need. I don't have one. That's why I don't have a lot of experience with them. But if it's your cup of tea, but I'm trying not to belabor the point, but make sure it's actually better for what you need. Because again, especially it tends to be younger, less experienced shooters, but it could be an old guy. Well, I can shoot this thing. I shoot this lights out. Well, if you can, good for you. But if you're just saying that based on absolutely nothing, you're full of crap and you're going to get yourself hurt. Terminally, probably.
That's it. I mean, like I said, if you're a hunter, or doing something like that, and you have some nice single action revolver in 327 Federal, great. That's exactly what it's for. And if you hand load for it, it's even more versatile because you can load it down if you want to something else. Load it with a wad cutter at 1,000 feet per second. My gosh, that would be very effective. But in a small defensive gun, I mean, if you're carrying a 4-inch L frame in 327 Federal as your defensive gun, that's probably all right. Other than the recoil won't be bad, but it's still going to have a lot of muzzle blast, and all related things. And so you and I have both been out and pointed bad guys at guns and at nighttime. And all I remember is I want every advantage possible, and I've seen 9mm shot at nighttime on the street. And, with the right loads, I mean, there's not much muzzle blast whatsoever, so it doesn't destroy your night vision. It's controllable and you can make multiple hits, so.
And as many trainers will tell you, a handgun is an underpowered round anyway. So if you're counting on that extra 100th of an inch to make all the difference in the world, or that extra 50 feet of velocity, you're missing the point. It's all about placement. It's not about what you place there. So.
Well, it's funny you should say that. I saw a video not too long ago. A reader had asked me questions about, well, is a 40 more effective than a 45? Is it that more effective than a 9mm? And so I was nosing around because there's a lot of YouTube channels where they have police shootings, and so I found this one, and it was a sheriff's agency in the Midwest somewhere, and they carried 40s, 40 Glocks or something like that. And so it was an officer-involved shooting. And so there's a bad guy in front of him. The bad guy's got a knife like this. Cop pulls his gun. Bad guy takes a step. Cop shoots him once. Kind of center punched him, right?
Yeah.
And so the guy looked down like that.
What?
Yeah. Meanwhile, the cops yelling at him, drop the knife, drop the knife. I don't know. He didn't shoot him again, which surprised me.
Yeah.
And then the guy looked back up, he dropped the knife, and then he was kind of like a little wobbly on his feet, and he went over and he sat down on the curb, and I remember that it said, he looked up and he said, "Would you not shoot me anymore?"
Wow.
And there was the much vaunted 40, with a center mass hit.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you really don't need all the fire and brimstone. You really don't. So,
well, and not to get off on another topic, but you and I have both seen it in person. People get shot and die right there from an ineffectual minor caliber. And you've seen people take shotgun rounds and do stuff like, "Hey, quit shooting me." It's like, how in the world? You just don't know how a person is going to react. So that's why you better be ready with second, third, fifth shot, and you better be able to put it on target, especially if they don't like the fact you just shot them and they're moving around and doing all kinds of crazy things. So again, accuracy wins out over everything else. So.
And you better hope you can still see and hear when all this is going on.
Yeah. Where'd he go? Oh gosh, he's on top.
And if you don't believe me, I mean, just go to an indoor range. I've done that. I hear, bam, bam, on the other side of the sidewall here, and I think, holy crap, what is he shooting? And I look over and and he's shooting a 327 out of a short barrel gun. And it's like, I thought it was a 44 Magnum.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you mention that because it's not only loud, it makes that pong. You hear like the building resonate.
Yeah.
Pong.
Yeah. Well, if it's possible, maybe, this would be an interesting thing for indoor ranges to do is, have an evening 1 hour long class or something, bring people out there on your line and shut the lights off and then let them shoot their home defense gun. And I have a feeling you'd have a lot of converts after that.
Exactly. Or, go to Gunsight. There's a lot of good, reputable training academies and trainers who have access to indoor shoot houses. If you've never shot indoors, especially in a dynamic environment of a shoot house, it'll open your eyes to a lot of things. And you'll suddenly realize all that talk on the internet and all those games you played, it's a lot different when you're in the meat world. So
Oh, it's
Well,
true. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say that about wraps it up for the 327. Any parting words of wisdom from Roy, who has shot all kinds of stuff? And I didn't correct you, but you said, yeah, we pointed bad guys at guns before. I thought, no, but that's something to try. So you've even done that. But anyway, any parting words of wisdom?
Yeah. Well, yeah, bad guys are hard to hold up to point at guns.
They are. They move.
But yeah, pointed guns at bad guys. There we go. Well, all I remember from all those times is that I really did want the most advantage that I could have. I had always shot enough that I understood recoil and muzzle control and muzzle blast and, the ability to put multiple shots on a target. And so I chose the gun that was most effective, I thought, for me. Yep. And it wasn't a 357 Magnum, and it wasn't a 327 Magnum, So I would say just keep your wits about you when you think about it. Don't believe everything you see on the internet, the YouTube channels, including our show. But just remember, we're not against this. We just want you to be well educated and think about your options and apply the options that make the most sense for you in your situation.
Yep.
So,
and try it out. Nothing replaces real world experience.
Yeah, try it out.
Well, excellent words of wisdom on the 327. We'd like to hear what you think. You can reach me at editor@gunspodcast.us, or if you're watching on YouTube, of course, leave the comments. Roy's really good about checking those every day. I get to it when I can, with all the other stuff going on, but we do really enjoy, and sometimes we don't even answer, but we do pass them around. It's like, look what this knucklehead said, or sometimes this is really nice. We really like some of the comments we get. So please, we like to hear what the audience has to say, and we still learn. I think maybe one thing where we're a little different, Roy, is I don't think I know it all. In fact, the more I know, the less I know. And I know you're that way. So we want to hear what folks have to say. So real quick, some housekeeping. Of course, support our great sponsor here at Guns Podcast US, Ruger.
Whether you're on the range, in the field, or protecting your home, Ruger delivers durability and performance you can count on. Discover the full lineup, explore new releases, and see why Ruger continues to set the standard. Visit Ruger.com today.
And I want to get a plug in for Roy's book, The Insider. We talked about it on and off the last couple of months. It's a great book. It's Roy's collected insider columns. You can get that at Amazon. Make sure you check that out. And also you can get some of our other special interest publications, such as John Connor's Odd Angry Shot. But I heartily endorse Roy's Insider book. I think that's about it. Make sure you like and subscribe. And of course, as always, I'd like to thank you for joining us here on the Guns Podcast US, presented by Guns Magazine and sponsored by Ruger. On behalf of Roy Huntington, I'm the host of this little old podcast, Brent Wheat, reminding you yet again, now get out there and get shooting.